Good afternoon. We are doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We're doing it live on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com, the KBC app, and on-demand podcast, KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. A lot to unpack today as the House still working on that big, beautiful bill after the Senate narrowly passed the president's tax and spending bill on a party line vote in a marathon session. Still waiting for some news out of Washington. We'll take a big look at that big, beautiful bill with Grover Norquist coming up later this hour, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. We get local reaction on the business scene from Mark WILBUR, who's going to be joining us as well. Stocks, meanwhile, moving higher. More record highs today on optimism over trade deals. At the same time, there's more signs of an intensifying labor market slowdown. And that has boosted the case for the Fed to start cutting interest rates, perhaps sooner rather than later. The Dow came in for a closing loss of 10 points today. We're at 44,484 at the close. The S&P 500 powered up 29 at 6,227. The NASDAQ up 190 points at 20,393. The yield on the 10-year note at 4.28%. The price of gold hovering at around 3,373. Bitcoin getting another pop today. Apple moving higher on an upgrade from one industry analyst, Jefferies analyst, and Tesla shares moved up after Tesla produced more vehicles globally than expected in the second quarter, even as sales slipped. We'll talk more about that. In fact, let's get right to it here with the expert who's been all over the news in the last couple of days on Tesla and the president's back and forth with Elon Musk, the head of Tesla. Let's bring in Dan Ives now at Wedbush, top tech researcher at Wedbush Securities, which is based right here in Southern California. Daniel Ives, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Great to be here.
Great to have you with us here. And first of all, give us your reaction to this ongoing drama in Washington. And are you watching this closely? And as we are here, and do you think they're going to get the deal done by tonight?
I think this deal gets done. Look, I think the reality is that there's a lot of back and forth, but I think the market, and I think you see the market's anticipating that there'll be some drama, but the deal gets done.
All right. What about what's happening with Tesla here? You did a great write-up on this latest flare-up between President Trump and Elon Musk, who continues to criticize this big, beautiful bill. This is after he headed up that DOGE Department of Government Efficiency. We did see Tesla pull into reverse yesterday. Looks like it rebounded today. Give us an update on this ongoing drama.
Mm-hmm. Well, delivery numbers came in, better than feared today, which is important. It was a slight step in the right direction. But as we've talked about, you don't want to see Musk going into the political theater. It's really going to be minimal, no upside relative to Trump. And that's why it's essentially a junior high school friendship gone bad. BFFs, now enemies, right? And that's something where Tesla investors, you don't want to see Trump as an enemy of Musk.
All right. In all this, we see the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 hitting record highs this week. What's been catching your attention?
I mean, look, to me, and I think we could be looking at S&P 7,000, going into year end. Because if you look at there's trade deals, and we need to see what they look like in terms of, obviously Vietnam coming first, but obviously China, India, and others. Fed, I think, ultimately cuts 1 to 2 times, going to the rest of the year. And it all comes down to the AI revolution. It's spreading to second, third, fourth derivatives, which is why I believe tech stocks are up 10 to 15% in the second half of the year.
All right, and NVIDIA higher today as well, kissing record highs, up nearly $4 today, back to $157.25. Or is that a record high? You didn't get a chance to check on that, but what do you see ahead for NVIDIA here, the magnificent one?
I mean, I think it's going to be first one in the $4 trillion market cap club. Microsoft will be soon behind, in terms of entering that. And I think this is a stock that has a 2 in front, right? I think it's a $200 plus stock because there's one chip in the world fueling the AI revolution. That's the godfather of AI, Jensen, NVIDIA. That's why it continues to be one of our top names that we talk about, and more of these derivatives in the IVES AI 30.
All right, so NVIDIA's All-time high, 158.71, and we see it here at 157.25. Just a little over $1 below its all-time high. We'll keep an eye on that one. What about Apple, which has seen an impressive rebound lately, up another almost 5 today at 212 and change?
Yeah, it looks like they're getting off the treadmill. I mean, when it comes to AI, that me and you've talked about it. That was a yawner when you go back to WWDC, the developer conference. They can't be on the outside looking in when it comes to AI. So it looks like it's either Perplexity, a deal with Anthropic, more acquisitions. They're going to do something. And right now, the New York City cab driver is bearish on Apple.
And you were at that Worldwide Developers Conference, I remember. And what was the big takeaway there? They're moving more into AI, right? And anything else that people can get excited about?
I mean, that WWDC, I almost fell asleep, right? I mean, that was part of the problem. Like, it was a yawner. And it was clear leaving there they need to do something. And that's why it's the biggest install base in the world. And the consumer AI revolution is going to go through Apple. But they need to get this right, and it's not going to be internal. They're not going to be able to figure this out. And right now, the rest of tech is in the left lane of Ferrari going 100 miles an hour. You can't be in the right lane in a minivan going to 45 miles an hour. And that's what Apple's doing right now when it comes to AI.
You have a price target on Apple?
270. Like I said, I think it's one of our top names next 12 to 18 months. They just need to get off the treadmill, which they will, and figure out AI. And then that's the whole upside to the story in terms of the consumer piece.
All right, turning to crypto, I know you keep an eye on that too. Bitcoin near its all-time high here, above 109,000. The all-time high was just shy of 112 not too long ago. What's your reaction to what's happening on the crypto front?
The path's higher when it comes to crypto. I mean, in terms of just everything we're seeing, not even just in terms of risk on, but in terms of more and more investors recognizing that this is something where you're going to have more companies going down the path like MicroStrategy did. There's a supply-demand that continues to play out in crypto, and that's why I think Bitcoin paths higher. And as more and more of a risk-on happens, that's a positive for Bitcoin and, of course, Ethereum.
What about Circle, that big IPO pop this year, up about 500%, and now looking to get into banking as well, right? What's your view on the Circle Internet Group pulling back at more than 14 here, I see today at around 178?
Yeah, and look, and that's obviously had just a historical run, but that's one of the best ones out there. And I think look what's happened to Robinhood. Over 100. I mean, it speaks to disruptive finance where this is all going. It's a new age that's happening, whether it's on AI, software, tech, disruptive finance, and Circle obviously front and center there.
On there live with Daniel Ives, Managing Director and Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities. And what about some of the crypto ETF offerings? Bitto, for example. Have you had a chance to take a look at that one? And that's the one that throws out that huge dividend, right?
Yeah, there's a few out there. And look, I continue to think the best way to overall play crypto besides Bitcoin is obviously owning MicroStrategy.
Hello, my loves. It's Lala Kent. Yes, that Lala. And if you're not listening to the Give Them Lala podcast, here's what you're missing out on.
I stayed with my 2 kids. Mom and Kristen shared a room, and you and Landon shared a room. What the hell is going on? A lesbian couple, a gay couple, and then this
random woman with 2 kids.
So weird, but to me, it's the most common thing. This is my brother, his best friend, and my mom and her best friend. This is just how we roll. This is called the pod, okay?
Give Them Lala. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Is one of the best ways to play Bitcoin.
Robinhood stock, up big again today. Hood is the symbol on that. What about Coinbase and some of the other ancillary crypto-related names?
Look, but these are all plays on the broader theme, from crypto to disruptive finance, everything that we see at Robinhood. And you'll have some headlines, just like we've seen, right? I mean, you had some geopolitical, if you think about going to Iran, you'll have some with the Fed as we go into the next few months. We'll have some with trade deals with Trump. But Frank, I just think like the path's higher for this market in terms of second half. And I think a lot of the bears that are sitting in hibernation in the caves thinking some black swan event's going to happen, I mean, they're going to continue waiting in those caves because I don't think anything's happening.
What's your target for the NASDAQ now that we've blown past the all-time high here, S&P 500, record high this week? The Dow, a bit of a laggard here. Any targets on the major averages?
22,000, and bull case 23,000 for the year for NASDAQ. And like I told you, I think you're probably wearing an S&P 7,000 hat before the ball drops in Times Square New Year's Eve.
What hat are we going to be wearing? The Dow hat. What is it going to say?
I mean, it could have a 5 in front of it. I mean, look, the point is that do you get to 50,000? I just think 50,000 Dow, 7,000 S&P, 22 to 23,000 NASDAQ. If that happens, it's a good night New Year's Eve, right? It's another year of gains. But it's like I said, we're 3 more years to this tech bull market.
On the live with Daniel Ives at Wedbush Securities, and we didn't mention Amazon. Their Prime Day is coming up soon, right? And had that big wedding recently of the head of Amazon in Italy. What about Amazon?
Yeah, I thought I saw you coming off the boat for that wedding. Maybe I thought I saw you in one of the pictures for Bezos. Look, to me, this is one of the core names you want to own in terms of cloud, in terms of AI, in terms of AWS. I think the market is not fully capturing it, and that's why Amazon's one of our top picks.
All right, write down the list. Any other favorites in the Mag 7 list?
Look, obviously Meta is one of our favorites, NVIDIA, Microsoft, and we talk about Tesla. And then there's some outside, right? In other words, like when you look at cybersecurity, crowds like Zscaler, I think you're seeing a lot more strength on cybersecurity as well as in core cloud when it comes to names like Oracle, IBM. Old is in again.
Yeah, isn't that something? Big Blue, IBM, back in the news lately. Isn't that something? In Microsoft, who'd have ever thought we'd see it at these levels if you've been around for a few minutes? What about, there's so much to unpack here, but any flies in the Chardonnay here on the tariff front? We got another deadline coming up here, in about a week or so, and today Vietnam was in the news. Anything else that's on your radar screen?
Look, I thought Vietnam was a good step. Next week's a big week, July 9th. Obviously, China continues to be the big one in terms of deals. Look, and we got to see how Trump, in terms of does he move the deadline to potentially Labor Day? And I think that's really the focus. There's definitely some headline risk there. There's some risk in terms on the Fed because the Fed's not going to do anything until they know better about tariffs. But it keeps back. Like, I don't see any flies. I wouldn't say Chardonnay. I'd say I don't see any flies in the rosé.
Is that what you had at the wedding last week? I was not there, by the way.
I had rosé, and I saw you having some Chardonnay. I saw you across the hall.
On the air live with Daniel Ives at Wedbush. And anything else? What about analog gold, which has pulled back from its recent high above 3,500, looking at around 3,373? Platinum. Have you noticed what's happened with platinum above 1,400 and pulled back recently? What about the metals?
Look, but I think that's a good sign because look at gold. I mean, it's not like gold's like you want to see gold sort of stay in this area. You want to see the 10-year in this kind of 4.25 area. That's a little more Goldilocks scenario, but we're still positive in terms of where we think gold's going over the next 12 months. Just given, I think ultimately not even just fight to safety, but just ultimately that move there, especially with what we see with the debt markets.
Any other fallout from this big, beautiful bill as we understand it here at the moment? We saw that pop in healthcare names yesterday. United Health and Humana and some of the others had a pop and pulled back today. Anything else that's gotten your attention and potential fallout from this bill?
Yeah, I think look at the 10-year. The 10-year is telling you all you need to know. 10-year is not freaking out, right? 10-year is 4.25. So that's good. Like that's important. That's what you need to see in terms of what the market's telling you. It's not afraid about the bill, and I think that's important.
Where do you see the 10-year go from here? That's the one, of course, that we always mention, and that's the one that impacts
Sure.
the fixed rate mortgage rates. It looks like 4.28 here at the moment.
Look, Frank, I think you go under 4 in the next 6 months.
Wow.
And I think that's important in terms of what that does for housing, mortgage rates. I mean, you want to see that come under 4. I mean, that is really, I think, what the market wants to see. And then you need to give the Fed a green light to cut.
When is that cut going to come this month?
Oh, I think we'll get 2 before year end. I mean, I think as we go into the fall, I think we get 2, in September, and then 1 before year end.
All right. What about the big enchilada, the monthly economic reports coming out tomorrow instead of Friday, because Friday's the 4th of July, the monthly jobs report for the Labor Department. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
Look, you saw ADP, regardless of how much credibility back and forth. Now is obviously weak. It's not going to be a great number, but I still think it's stable unemployment, and you're not seeing any seismic shifts. And I think it's an important dynamic, right, in terms of as it all plays out. There's obviously a lot of moving parts, in terms of these numbers, but I don't see a silver bullet that we get tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. And the Fed chairman, I think, had a conversation at some forum, was asked if he thought tariffs would increase inflation, and that was one reason why they've held the line on rates for the time being. What was your reaction to his comments today, and what can we expect on the inflation front?
I think inflation's rolling off. If tariffs weren't there, Fed would have already started to cut. And I think Powell said that. And at the end of the day, Powell, they're going to have a statue of Powell. He's navigated, despite all the criticism, Trump, everything else, soft landing. And I think you get a soft landing, you get 2 cuts, and this is going to go down in history as kind of, it's landing the plane very, very soft. And I think, call it a 10% chance, maybe 2 years ago, that this was going to happen.
Right. Any specific places where Daniel Ives is putting money now and or taking it off the table?
It's risk on. It's tech. You want to be. It's like I said. You want to be in the left lane, in the Ferrari, 95 miles an hour. That's where tech. That's where we see the growth and the risk on. I'm not saying every once in a while you don't get a speeding ticket, right? But I'd rather be in the left lane, owning tech, risk on, than be in the minivan 45 miles an hour lane and as a right lane bandit.
No minivans for you, Dan. Well, thank you very much for that terrific assessment as always, and wish you a terrific 4th of July holiday weekend. Break out the bubbly. Daniel Ives, Managing Director and Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities, headquartered right here in Southern California. Live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. I love that song. 790 KBC welcomes the Fab 4 Magical Mystery Tour. Coming to the Pacific Amphitheater at the OC Fair August 2nd, a month from today, part of the Toyota Summer Concert Series. Tickets on sale now at packamp.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-790-5222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller 9. All concert tickets, by the way, include admission to the OC Fair. Tickets furnished by the Pacific Amphitheater. Call now. Caller 9 wins 1-888-790-5222. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Mixed finish for the stock market today, with the Dow coming in for a closing loss of 10 points at 44,484 as some of the big Dow components pulled back. S&P 500 up 29, and the NASDAQ at 190. We saw record highs for those averages this week as we inch closer to the 3-day holiday weekend. One more trading day left in the week tomorrow, and we'll be starting the day tomorrow with the big enchilada of monthly economic reports, and that is the jobs report we'll be getting from the Labor Department. Today we did see some more signs of a cool down on the job front with the ADP report showing private employers unexpectedly cut 33,000 jobs last month in June, missing expectations of around 98,000 added. It was the first month of job losses in the private sector in more than 2 years. All of this setting the stage for the big enchilada of jobs reports tomorrow, the June jobs report from the Labor Department. This, of course, is the one that the Fed watches very, very closely. Most Fed watchers still do not expect the Fed to cut rates in July, as we just heard from Daniel Ives at Wedbush, but almost all are betting on at least one rate cut by September, and now more than 20% are pricing in 2 cuts by that meeting. Taking a look at the price of gold, it's at $3,373, up about 13 here at the moment. Oil pulling back to $67.39. The yield on the 10-year note now at 4.28%. Checking Bitcoin, got a pop today, right now at 109,174. Ethereum at 2,591, and Doge at 17 cents. And now the latest news on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC. Not quite done with the big, beautiful bill. Still being discussed in Washington, back at the House now. That's the big focus this evening. And with a front row seat in all this is the president of Americans for Tax Reform, the one and only Grover Norquist, who joins us live here with the very latest. Good afternoon to you, Grover.
Good to be with you.
Wonderful to have you with us.
We're close to passing the big, beautiful bill. It's going to go back. It may happen tonight. It may happen tomorrow. But the House leaders, the leadership of a handful of House conservatives who keep saying, can't we save more money? And I'm with them. Let's get as much as we get. But you got to be able to do something the Senate can live with. They keep saying, maybe we could do better. If the House doesn't pass the Senate bill, it gets sent back to the Senate. Let's say they pass something different, goes to the Senate.
Jim Rome takes on sports.
Why? Because you're not playing me.
With rapid-fire takes.
And a lot to get to, and I'm not sure you're going to like all of it. Honestly, I don't even care if you like all of it or not. I have a job to do.
Scorching debates.
On any given week, you have lots to beef about. Take advantage of it. Get up in here.
He's the Spitfire of sports smack.
She's not my fault. We will get to all of that.
The Jim Rome Show podcast.
Get up in here, and we'll beef later on. What's your beef?
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
You've been warned.
Murkowski, the more big government Alaska Republican, has already announced she's looking forward to having it come back so she can add more spending. So those conservatives who think that the bill could get better if you sent it back to the Senate have gotten a wake-up call because they've been told by the swing vote in the Senate that the swing vote in the Senate wants more spending. And isn't a particular fan of reducing taxes. So I think that's been a big change in tenor. Those conservatives who thought maybe they could make it better than what it was, that came coming out of the House and the Senate, realized that this is our opportunity. Now, does that mean we give up on more spending cuts or more tax reduction? No. There's going to be another bill like this in November, and there'll be one in the spring. There are 2 more buses leaving the train station that we can put good tax reduction and good spending reduction in. That's the place to put our energy in the next 2 measures. Take the win here. Take your winnings off the table. They're huge. A permanent, largest tax cut in the history of the country, permanent, not temporary, not for 5 or 10 years, permanent. Tax cuts that will make it much easier for businesses to invest, to make people more productive, to raise their pay. Everybody who pays taxes will see their tax rates lower than if this bill doesn't pass. It is a huge, huge win. The beginning of reforming entitlements like Medicaid, so that you require that people be looking for work and this is not welfare for people who sit able-bodied young men who sit at home and do nothing. This is not something where we're handing out cash to those people. It is a huge win. The president's very excited about it. The House and Senate leadership is, and I think it's a great bill. Now, can we in the future add to this? Absolutely, yes.
On the air live with Grover Norquist, who's about to watch the awesome bus leave the station there in Washington. I'm following the latest. This just coming across the wires now. Representative Warren Davidson, a Republican of Ohio, who in May voted against the House GOP version of the Trump mega bill, said today that he is now a yes on the Senate-passed legislation. So that's the very latest here as this drama continues to play out here. Now, you've compiled a list of tax cuts in this big, beautiful bill. Looks like no taxes on tips, right? And what about Social Security? Some confusion about that. Maybe you can clarify how this thing's coming together.
Sure. What they do is that I think it's $6,000 of your Social Security payment is non-taxable, is deducted. So it's not 100%, but they're building towards it. It's the first step towards getting there, and so that's what they did there. And they also are beginning the process of no tax on overtime.
On overtime. What about tips?
Tips, yes, no tax on tips. They're doing it for independent contractors, Uber drivers, people who do Uber Eats and all the other delivery folks, as well as the people who, beauticians and barbers. It is millions of Americans. It is a lot of good money. And it's so wonderful because the labor unions have been trying to kill tips because in a tipped industry, the waiters and waitresses who do a really good job and really hustle and get big tips, they don't want the union to come in and say, everybody here is exactly the same and 1 hour of one person's work is worth the same as another hour. They know that's not true. Certain bartenders know how hard they work to earn tips. And they're not going to let the labor unions come in and say, no, you got to add up all your tips. And the people who don't work and are rude customers are going to walk away with as much tip income or just the same hourly pay that you have. So the unions are trying to kill tips. This helps make tipping more easier for people and protects you from the unions taking that away.
For our listeners here in the Los Angeles area, in Hollywood, waiters and waitresses, that actually means actors and actresses here for the audience here in the Los Angeles area. So we want to make sure everyone is on the same page. Anything else that jumps out at you and how what was what's bringing these holdouts around? Obviously, a lot of concern about the budget deficit and all that, but ultimately the selling point here is that the economy is going to grow, and that's what's going to do it.
Yes. By making the tax cuts permanent, the economists say that alone will increase growth in the country to 3% a year over the next 10 years. That level of growth, because if a business knows what their tax policy is going to be, what depreciation is, what expensing is, what the tax rates are, and that they will not change, that there's a cap on those taxes out into the future, they will invest more and they can make it easier for people to become more productive, earn more money. It is going to be a huge step forward for growth, and grow at 3% a year for a decade, and the revenue to the government increases by $4 trillion over what they had been expecting. That is a lot of deficit reduction, and not from raising taxes, but from having people earn more and pay taxes on it. So we need to grow our way away from the deficit and the debt. We need growth. We need serious tax reduction. We need the corporate income tax to come further down so we can compete better with China and with Europe. And there's another big win in this bill was a punitive tax against Canada and Europe because they've been taxing our high-tech companies, stealing American money, and being very nasty to our companies, and not to their own companies, but to American companies. And we said, if you don't stop that, we're going to hit you with these rather significant taxes. The Canadians today agreed to end that policy. It's called a digital tax that they had, and the Europeans have as well. So, the president's idea that he's going to use tariffs to get other people to stop their attacks on American companies, it's certainly working in this zone.
Very important points. Thank you for that, Grover Norquist. So it could be a declaration of independence from taxes, or at least a tax hike here come July 4th. We'll let you get back to the front row seat there following the latest votes and how it's all coming together there on this big, beautiful bill, possibly tonight, possibly tomorrow. We'll keep an open line to you. Grover Norquist, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you.
Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here for United Gold Group. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now with the U.S. debt at more than $36 trillion and climbing, a possible recession on the horizon, and the development of the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement and the markets and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and yes, silver. Give my friends at United Gold Group a call right now. The number is 800-753-8534. Mention Mottek, and you can get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 800-753-8534. 800-753-8534, or go to UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Local business people all ears for the latest news in Washington on this big, beautiful bill. Also the jobs report that's coming out first thing in the morning. And, of course, a lot going on here locally. Let's bring in Mark Wilbur now, head of Employers Group here in the Los Angeles area, as well as founding member and former chair of LA BizFed, and also the former associate dean of the USC Marshall School of Business. Mark Wilbur, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Great to be on, Frank. Thanks for having me.
A lot of moving parts here. Give us your reaction here to this big, beautiful bill that's still coming together here.
Well, I'm actually really excited about it. I hope they can get it done. There is, obviously some red, white, and blue pride going on there and trying to get it done on by July 4th. I get that. But the reality is there is an enormous amount of opportunity in that bill. Sure, there's some expenditures and things like that. And we've been watching the battle of Elon versus Trump on social media back and forth for the better part of a week. And the problem is that Elon's only focused in on the big, beautiful bill, and he's missing two major portions that he needs to account for, and he hasn't. And that is, one is the tariffs. The CBO does not include any impacts from tariffs at all into the budgeting process or their budgeting assessments or reconciliations. And then the last piece relates to the investments in the country. We've had, and I know, we all know our president loves to exaggerate a bit, and he's been throwing out numbers between 10 and 14 trillion of reinvestment into the U.S. But let's just say it's just half of that. Let's just say it's 5 or 6 trillion. You're talking about manufacturing, infrastructure, technology, and many of these companies like NVIDIA and Apple and others are building plants and developing manufacturing and capabilities here in the United States. And those are all high-end jobs, Frank. Those are all really good jobs, and helping to build middle class, as well as the auto industry. I mean, what he's doing to push for the auto industry in the United States will have a formative and long-lasting impact for rebuilding the middle class, which is really a major target of the Trump administration. And as we all know, going back to the 1950s, what was done there in the growth of manufacturing, if you don't have a middle class, you have a problem. And in the 50s, our middle class exploded, and it endured benefits for our country for decades.
On the air live with Mark Wilbur, chairman of Employers Group here in Los Angeles area. And Mark, any other business buzz you're picking up here? We got the jobs report for the month of June coming out first thing tomorrow morning. This after this ADP report came in a bit weaker. What do you expect tomorrow? And what's your view of what's happening on the local job front?
I think I'm not expecting anything dramatic Today, ADP was a little dramatic, and I thought the market overreacted just a bit to it, to the job cuts. I think that's all carryover from uncertainty in the last couple of months. I think it's less about cutting jobs and more about not adding jobs. So, there's always churn in the job market, Frank. There's, people coming, people going. That's always happening, and they're always looking at what the net effect is. And I think there was a lot of uncertainty because typically, Frank, we get in the summer months, and what do? We get all the high school kids and college kids getting part-time jobs and things like that, and you have a lot of jobs coming up. So you kind of expect a little bit of growth, but the pullback, I think, surprised the market a bit. I'm expecting tomorrow to be potentially a small uptick, a small growth, but we'll see what happens. I don't think it's going to have a huge impact unless it swings wildly one way or another.
All right, we've been getting geography lessons lately. Today, Vietnam was in focus on the tariff front with this latest deal here. China, of course, still being discussed ongoing, and the list goes on. How do you see this all coming together and impacting, of course, trade, which is big here in the Los Angeles area?
Yeah, and and you and I have talked about this in the past. Most people really, truly do not understand tariffs. I mean, they hear it's bad on some news report somewhere, and so, it must be bad. Actually, tariffs have been used for years and decades for us to buy friendship with other countries, allowing them to tariff our things. I actually think the Vietnam deal was great because, they avoided a rate that was going to be literally twice what they negotiated. They're going to be paying a 20% tariff on the products, and I think that's going to be. Because I don't know if you know this, Frank, but China actually is exporting a lot of Chinese goods out of Vietnam. So this actually shores up a little bit of kind of end around that China was doing to us over the last almost 10 years. And so that helps shore that up and cuts off that kind of cheat code route. It's a good answer for us.
Canada folded on their tax idea in response to President Trump's move on the chessboard here. So interesting. That's one of our biggest trading partners here in the Los Angeles area, Canada.
It is, and I saw them folding when Carney put his foot forward on that. I saw that folding in 1 second. I was like, that's not going to last long. And sure enough, it was like a couple days later, and they caved in. So that doesn't surprise me. I just think Canada doesn't like the answer. They suddenly are going to have to play fair, and that's all Trump has asked for, is that there is some balance in this process. It's not about us taking advantage of other countries, things like that. He's just trying to create some balance versus us spending trillions every year supporting other countries. He's trying to trim that down, and that inures benefits, Frank, year over year over year. It's like the Doge cuts. People don't realize that it's not a one-year cut. The cuts they're making in Doge, those last year over year over year. And so the benefits to our country are extraordinary long term.
Yep, just about 30 seconds left here. And certainly if this bill passes tonight or tomorrow, that's one of the big uncertainties that'll finally be lifted. And look, maybe the animal spirits will be back in force here.
I agree with you, Frank, and I think if it does pass, if they get that thing done, I mean, whether it's the 4th or it ends up being a couple of days next week, I don't really think it matters, but you're going to see, I think, a decent bump in the market because it will settle things down.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Wilbur, thank you very much for taking the call. We wish you and everyone there a happy 4th of July weekend. That's Mark Wilbur, Chairman of Employers Group, former chair, founding member of BizFed, and former Associate Dean of the USC Marshall School of Business. Fight On, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
The No Contest Wrestling Podcast.
I am the heel that you love to hate, O'Shea Jackson Jr.
TJ Jefferson, what up? Friends of the show are really wanting to engage with this podcast.
Welcome, AJ Francis.
They were like, we just want you to cause a ruckus. So I went out there, did my own version of a pipe bomb, and it went everywhere.
Wrestling royalty right here. Mick Foley. Anything that you're glad that it's gone?
Well, glad the chair shots to the head are gone.
The No Contest Wrestling Podcast, part of the Rich Eisen Podcast Network.
Can you tell them where to find us?
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.